Thanks very much, and morning everybody. My name's Wendy Violentano, and it's quite a strange time for me because up until last Friday I was head of the European Social Fund Division in the Department for Work and Pensions, a post that I've held and enjoyed for several years. I've now moved on within the department, but this was a really nice, for me, a nice final marker stone to hear about some of the projects that ESF supports, so I'm really pleased to be here. The theme of the seminar is innovation and effective practice in helping young people NEET into work or into further education, all through ESF support. I think it fits really well with the focus of WorldSkills event this year, this week, where we've been celebrating the high level of vocational skills that young people can achieve. And as we've just heard, I think if you go and look at the exhibition, I think you'll actually be blown away by some of the achievements of the young people that we have here this week. We have Justin from ESF Works, who's going to take some photos during the course of the seminar, so I hope that's okay, but if you're not comfortable with that, then do please let us know. We will hear from we're going to hear from 4 speakers in 3 sessions this morning. I'm really pleased that we have Dimcho Tornatov here from the European Commission. He's Policy Officer in DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. And Dimcho is going to speak about how the European Commission is improving youth employment opportunities in Europe, including youth on the move and through ESF. We will then hear from Beverly Burgess, Head of Specialist Policy, and Sophie Bonaluk, ESF Policy Manager from the Young People's Learning Agency. They will tell us something about how, since 2007, the YPLA co-financed ESF employment and skills projects in England have helped young people NEET into further education and work. And then our 3rd speaker is David Cottrell, who's had something of a traumatic journey, I think, to find us here. David's the Executive Director of Asphalia and will speak about how his organisation's delivered a number of effective NEET-focused ESF projects here in London and in the South East. Each presentation will last for 10 minutes and no longer, please, because we'd like to have some time for a question and answer session at the end. So with no further ado, I'm going to invite Dimcho up to speak to us. Does he just click through now? Are we all?
Yeah, just press the right button.
Just press the...
Yeah.
Nope. You lied.
Right arrow, sorry.
Right arrow, that one. There you go.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Wendy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak and to present the position of the Commission on 2 very important topics, like youth employment and skills. I would like to confirm at the very beginning that these 2 topics are strategic and are on the very top level of the Commission's agenda. Why? For several reasons. First of all, the last financial crisis affected young people much more severe than any other social group. This concerns especially young people who did not complete their compulsory education, young people who are not in employment at all, young people who are not in training, or young people living in deprived regions, as well as young people being in part-time employment. So there is also a clear evidence from last recessions that early unemployment obviously leads to social exclusion of young people. So the next reason is we still have in Europe labor market segmentation on national level, which is a very unfavorable element, a factor which makes the life of young people much more difficult by finding job. or by their transition from part-time to full-time employment. So, the next reason is we have already the consequences in Europe of the so-called demographic decline, which means there are already shortages of labor supply. And these effects will be much stronger by 2020. So there is, saying all this, there is clear evidence that young people as a social group face challenges in their transition from education to work, from part-time to full-time employment, or from unemployment to employment. The next reason, there is a big mismatch on national level, in the national labor markets, between skill supply and labor market demand. And that's an additional factor which makes it very difficult for young people to find an appropriate job. The next negative factor, which is a serious obstacle for young people to find a job, is the lack of work experience. Some basic facts to all this. So we have 21% unemployed young people today. This is more than 5 million across Europe. We have each year more than 6,000 pupils who do not complete their compulsory level of education. They leave earlier education and training. Following the trends on the labor market today, it is estimated that in some years, by 2020, 35% of the offered jobs will require higher skills level than today. Today, it's estimated that some 29% of the jobs require higher skills level. Furthermore, only 31% of the Europeans have higher education degree, which compared to the main competitors in Europe is much lower level than in the United States and in Japan, respectively 40 and more than 50%. Additionally, Europe has totally a much lower share of researchers in the labor force than the main competitors country which I mentioned. For all these reasons, and I must say that's a very short overview without any details, for all these reasons the Commission decided to put in the 2020 strategy a very ambitious target, at least 40% of the 34 years old to have completed tertiary or equivalent education by 2020, which is supposed to help to reach the average employment target of 75% in Europe. The shortly described situation shows that there is a need for radical improvement of the transition of young people to the labor market. As I mentioned already, the Commission decided last year to start the 2020 strategy, and one of the main flagship initiatives, which is Youth on the Move, deals with youth employment. This flagship initiative is about helping young people to get the right knowledge, to get the right skills, to get the right work experience in order to get their first job. This will be within a framework where the Commission will support the Member States by designing their national employment policies as regards young people. Maybe I should clarify very shortly what's the real position of the Commission in order not to wake up, let's say, expectations which are not based on real facts and real competencies. The Commission has very restricted competencies as regards employment, social affairs, education, and cultures, and all of the activities are within the so-called open method of coordination. This is based in the treaty, but as I said, the Commission has very restricted functions, which are mainly in promoting certain initiatives, certain kind of policies on national and on European level. That's the case in the case of the Youth on the Move. So generally, the Commission provides action in 3 areas. First of all, improving education and training systems, then improving youth employment, and the 3rd area is improving mobility for young people as regards their mobility studying abroad as well as to find a job abroad. The tools the Commission is going to use are mainly concrete recommendations. In order to be more concrete, that's the most powerful tool for the Commission to recommend certain policies, certain actions to the Member States in order to reach the targets of the 2020 strategy. This year the Commission drafted the first country-specific recommendations, and I must say here one of the recommendations to the UK was on skills as regards the intermediate level, provision of skills for the intermediate level. There will be new legislative initiatives from the side of the Commission. There will be direct support for young people and entrepreneurs as regards creating new opportunities for young people to find their first job, and there will be stronger involvement of the business sector. In the first area, education, the most important task for the Commission this year and during the next programming period from 2014 to 2020 will be to reduce the early school leaving. As I said, that's a considerable problem across Europe. More than 6 million young people leave earlier school or training. So generally, these are the people which will be tomorrow unemployed and which will be the most vulnerable people on the labor market. The second task is to improve the lifelong learning system by developing key competencies in line with labor market needs. With other words, this is a strategic topic for the Commission to reach better matching between provision of skills and the labor market demand. Furthermore, the Commission will promote apprenticeship-type vocational training across Europe. The idea generally is to raise the percentage of young people participating in higher education. The Commission is providing also in 2012 to publish a communication on reforming and modernizing the higher education system across Europe. As I already said, also in this area of education and culture, the Commission has very restricted functions, but we suppose that a communication will promote actions across the Member States in order to reform and modernize their higher education systems. The Commission furthermore will encourage mobility, including between academia and industry, and also mobility in terms of finding a job abroad. The Commission is going to publish in 2011 also a benchmark performance of the European higher schools. The second area is employment within the action, youth and work. The Commission wants to intensify the contacts between young people and small and medium enterprises. encouraging demand by the small and medium enterprises for more employment for young people. There will be very strong focus on the public employment services and their role. The Commission will continue with the mutual learning program, which is running since a couple of years. Furthermore, it will be strengthen the cooperation between the European employment advisors within the EURES network, and generally the Commission will continue to monitor the situation of young people being not in employment, education or training. The second area is the mobility area, as I told. The Commission will publish the European vacancy monitor. Furthermore, through different learning programs already existing since years, like Socrates, Erasmus, Da Vinci, and so on, the European Commission wants to create opportunities for all young people to spend some part of their studies abroad in another university. Furthermore, the Commission will publish on the Europe portal information on the rights and opportunities for students and young people in Europe, which contains also the rulings of the European Court of Justice on the rights of students across Europe. The Commission will create also the Youth on the Move card, which is supposed to facilitate mobility across Europe for young people. In 2012, early 2012, the Commission will start the initiative Your First EURES Job, which will support young people to access employment opportunities and take up a job abroad. More concretely, it is More concretely, it's provided to financially support young people through different financial facilities, which includes more than 10 million euro the year, and the Commission supposes that more than 5,000 people will find a job across Europe. The most important question is, I would like to quote the Swiss people. I don't know if there are Swiss people in the room, but they are very pragmatic, and they always ask, regardless what they undertake, they always ask, who pays for this? So, partially, the member states pay for all these actions, and partially, it is the European Union who pays through different financial facilities, like the European Progress Microfinance Facility, like the European education programs, which I mentioned already, Erasmus, Leonardo, Comenius, and Grundtvig. And the most important tool is the European Social Fund, which in the current program period supports a lot of young people. 1/3 of the investment of the European Social Fund is for young people. And the most important thing is that during the next programming period, which starts in 2014, there will be a very clear link between the European Social Fund and the other financial tools to the 2020 strategy, and especially to youth employment and skills. That means all of the activities will be supported, assisted by the European Social Fund and the other mentioned facilities. I think my time is over. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thanks. I think that quite nicely sets for us the context, both politically and economically. And now we're going to move straight into hearing from Sophie and from Beverly. about practical measures that we've taken to help young people.
Good morning, I'm Beverly Burgess, Head of Specialist Programmes at the Young People's Learning Agency. I'm only going to say a little bit and then I'm going to hand over to Sophie, because Sophie's the person with the interesting detail of the sort of things that we've been doing and the sort of impact. I just wanted to say really that obviously we're now heading quite quickly towards 2013, which is when the raising of the participation age for 13-year-olds, not 13-year-olds, sorry, 17-year-olds, my children would kill me if it was for 13-year-olds, for 17-year-olds comes into being. And you know, at the moment we're in a situation where we've got the highest numbers of 16 and 17-year-olds engaged in education and training, and we want to maintain that trajectory to 2013. And it's about looking at that whole package of provision, education and training that's out there for young people, and ESF is a particularly important bit, because that's the bit where the tailoring of the provision to meet those specific needs of young people who are either likely to disengage from learning or who are already not in education, employment and training, are likely to be able to re-engage and get them back on that pathway to further education and training and eventually into employment. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie now so she can tell you some of the detail behind all of that.
Thank you. I'm just going to try and get into the next presentation. That's it. So thanks, Beverly. I'm really pleased to be here to talk about the European Social Fund. So what I'm going to do in this slot is to let you know which kind of activities and what the European Social Fund does for young people in England. So basically the rationale behind the activities that the European Social Fund is supporting is to close the attainment gap between the advantaged and disadvantaged young people. So we are working with the most vulnerable people, really, and we try to do what mainstream provision can't do, is giving that extra bit of support that some of those vulnerable learners really need. It's about meeting their individual needs, try and capture their attention and stimulate their interest, really. So we want to give innovative and flexible provision to be able to do that. So we are targeting at the 14 to 19 young people who are not in education, training or employment, or who are at risk of becoming so. There are young people who face multiple barriers to their participation. They can have very deep personal or family issues. They can have issues with their language, if English is not their first language. They can have behavior issues, motivation issues. The type of client groups can be refugees, they can be teenage young parents, they can be homeless young people, young offenders as well, etc. really. So what is needed is to be able to tailor the provision according to the individual needs of the learners, and those needs are very different from one young person to the other. And this is really one of the challenges that providers like Asfalea are facing. No, wrong button again. Yeah, sorry. In terms of the activities, they can either focus on client groups. So if, for example, within a local area, we think that we need a bit more of support for young offenders, for example, or for learners with learning difficulties and disabilities, the European Social Fund can support that. We could also support a type of provision that could be a pre-apprenticeship training, for example, if really we think that there are a lot of young people who are not quite ready to take up an apprenticeship, that European Social Fund can do that. In terms of the activities, they all start with an initial assessment and with an information, advice and guidance. And this is really to take account of the skills that the young people have acquired, but also to take account of their barriers, their needs and their personal ambitions. So the activities, they are very different, really, the activities that we give to those young people. They have to be relevant to them. They have to stimulate their interest. So they can be one-to-one support or group support. They can be those kind of training that are very desk-based or a bit more interactive. They could be something around drama, around sport, for example, that could be delivered. For those young people as well who are not ready to take on a job, you can have those kind of employability skills training, job coaching, etc. The venues as well that are used can be different. They can be very traditional, like a school venue or college venue, or they can make use of a cafe, for example. If a young person needs to have a one-to-one session and be a bit more sporty, that can happen in that way. Or a stadium could also be used if, for example, they want to use that kind of sporty activities. The achievements, since 2007, around 187,000 participants have been recruited, and more than 159,000 participants have progressed into education, employment or training. Really, what was really important, some kind of entry-level training has been provided, as well as level 1 and level 2 training. But what was really important and what has helped those young people to progress was really about that improvement in terms of the motivation, behavior, and confidence kind of training that was very important. This is about laying really important foundations for those learners. And it's about taking time, really, to do that. A lot of personal barriers can also be tackled. This is also about breaking addictions, breaking the reoffending cycle, being able to help a young mum to be more confident to go through a qualification. The European Social Fund supports transport costs and childcare costs as well. What's important is also to work with local authorities and creating partnerships, that's for providers, so that they can shape the provision according to the local needs. Sorry. In terms of the lessons learned, this is the kind of things that we've learned from case studies. So one-to-one support is very important for learners, as well as mentoring. The flexibility around the training that is being delivered is very important as well. We are reaching hard to reach learners, and so it's about giving training during the year at any time, really, helping those young mums to come and attend a training around their kind of childcare requirements. And in terms of what's important for providers, I've listed just 3 bullet points, but really I'm going to let David speak now to let us know a bit more about that.
Okay, thanks, Sophie. I think that very nicely set out for us how ESF really adds that value in being able to do something a little bit different and additional and flexible. And now we're going to hear from David Cottrell from Australia about how that is actually put into practice for young people. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Wendy and Sophie, for inviting us. There are a lot of fantastic providers out there, so we feel quite honoured to be asked to come in and share with you. Sorry, we're a bit fine on the time. We were walking around trying to find our way here, and then we saw someone with a black top on the back saying, "I am in the know." So we ran up and said, "Can you tell us where the seminars is?" And of course they said, "I don't know." So I'm just going to briefly fly through some stuff about Asphaleia. I think when you hear those statistics from our first speaker, there are 21% of youth unemployed, 6 million are leaving school early. We're all kind of familiar with the issues that we're facing and the growing pressures behind that now. There's no sort of guarantee that's going to get better given the pressures we're walking towards with the economy, etc. Let me introduce Asphaleia to you. It's nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you press the button and the thing doesn't happen? Oh, I did press the right and a little thing come up. Oh, okay, not the right thing. Okay, good. Okay, I see. Okay, Asphaleia is an organisation dedicated to impacting as many disadvantaged young people as possible. It's what we do. It's the young people who we work with. We presently provide training programs for disengaged and disadvantaged people, and I'm going to be talking about those in a minute. But we also work in the care field as well. We cross both social care and training issues and are well familiar with some of the more specific needs of disadvantaged young people. We have a fostering agency as well, working with children 24/7. We do services for other organisations working with children and young people. So because we're so familiar, we try and offer support services such as bid writing, tendering, business planning, etc. for other organisations. And we also do specialised one-off projects. We're looking to, when needs arise, we try and respond, raise money and come up with a project. One example of that would be a project called Buddy Me. We raised money from Comic Relief to work with trafficked children coming in through Gatwick and West London and Kent, the entry ports, and that's one of the projects we're doing as well. So right-hand arrow, get in. Okay, some of the neat projects, you'll be pleased to know I'm not going to explain all of these and what they do, but just to give you an idea of how many over the last 6 years funded by the European Social Fund. We always have a laugh when we write a tender as to what we will call this one, because we're always looking to be original, incisive, fresh, and pretty well every project name or label has been used many times. So Pathways to Progression, P2P in London, Time to Learn, T2L, Yes, Yes to, Safeguarding the Future, Another World, Step into Work, A+, CARES, which means Connect, Engage, Support. In the southeast, On to, Up to. That was preceded by On to and Up to. One for 14 to 16, one for 16 pluses, A+, and there are more. We roughly calculate over the last 6 or 7 years, we have engaged with over 5,500 NEET young people, or those at risk of being NEET, through ESF funding. Just to get on to talk about the young people more specifically, a whole range of young people we work with, and as Sophie's alluded to, the vast majority have significant disadvantage or significant reasons as to why they are NEET. It's not by accident. There's often a whole story or a list of things that have created that. Looked after children. I don't know if you was at a fostering forum recently with all fostering providers, and they were trying to talk to the providers about promoting education. And they asked all the people there, have you heard, can you guess how many non-looked after young people achieve 5 GCSEs, C and above? What would be the guess? Eventually they said it's about 50 to 55%. And then the next question was, how many looked after children do you think? These are looked after children professionals. And they couldn't guess. And when they were told it was about 13%, there was just a hush in the room of shock that they're working in this field and not conscious about the potential impact of being looked after on education potential for children and young people. It's all very complex, and I don't mean to be cliched about it in anything I'm about to say. We also work with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, numbers of thousands of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children coming into this country over the last decade. Again, another complex scenario. When you look at the statistics of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, even amongst all the controversies about where they're from and economic migrancy, the statistics of the largest influx are usually in relation to the countries where the most significant conflict is happening. Presently, that would be Afghanistan or countries related to that. And the young people, when they come into the country, they generally have a pre-flight experience, what happened, what was happening in their pre-flight world, that led up to them actually fleeing. There's their flight itself. So we've had stories of children as young as 9 taking 3 months to make a journey to the UK. We've had stories of a young man who literally had his name go up on a wanted poster due to some things someone in his family had said. He was quickly got onto an aeroplane, arrived in the UK, not knowing where the destination was, and all he had was a basketball magazine. A whole range of stories across those young people. We work with young people with mental health issues. We have seen what we perceive to be a significant increase over the last decade of the occurrence of mental health issues with children and young people. Young offenders, I was talking to a learner myself the other day, getting some feedback. She's telling me about her background. Mum's been in prison, my dad's been in prison, my brother's been in prison, I've been in prison. We work with young people with substance abuse. Just to bring you right up to date, last week 2 of our learners turned up, both females, in one of our learning centres on one of our projects, both stoned. These are the current realities of the kind of work we're trying to engage in. Young people with behavioural and emotional difficulties and learning difficulties. And again, we see a regular, and this is one of the challenges to providers, it's okay being able to deliver ESOL, numeracy and literacy, but providers are constantly being challenged to be delivering those in the context of young people with Asperger's, ADHD, and there's a real stretch to organisations like ourselves that we need more than just tutors who teach and project workers who support. There needs to be a greater range, and that's a continuing challenge for us going forward. Moving on quickly to the progression and work scenario, the honest truth is the majority of young people we work with will progress to FE. And sometimes where we'll have challenge with funders, obviously, is their ambitions to get them into employment and to other training, apprenticeships and all that kind of stuff. But we often find our greatest contribution to the future employment of those young people is to get them back engaged in the learning system, the FE colleges. Another problem presented by that is colleges are often the most inaccessible because they have 2 entry points a year. Maybe it's September and it's January, and I get that. It's not easy to be different. I'm a governor of a sixth form college. I understand the dimensions there, but it does present challenges and difficulties. However, others have gone off into alternative training. Sorry, I'm speaking quickly, but it's to get all it out in time. Such as the Prince's Trust programs, specific alternative provisions like DJing and sport activities that alternative learning providers come up with, which we really appreciate. We have young people going into apprenticeships, and even though the apprenticeship market is increasing, we're finding with youth unemployment is when apprenticeship places become available, the competition is intense, and quite often our learners who have just coming through dealing with disadvantage and trying to get back into learning find it difficult to compete. So that remains a challenge going forward. And then employment, we found also that's difficult, it's challenging, some great stories. I'm going to finish on one when I finish in a minute. But we are now actively seeking to create our own employment opportunities, setting up our own apprenticeships, getting our own Prince's Trust, so we can actually make those things happen. And we have some great stories about some organisations. We'll be employing young people ourselves, doing all we can to find solutions. How do you create a job opportunity? And lastly, just to finish with a story of 3 young people, Tanay, Khalid and Merwan. I don't know how many of you actually work on projects like this, but you know, often when you pack someone off to a job, it's kind of good luck, hope it goes well, and I hope this is the beginning of something new. And part of the projects now involve tracking and ringing, and sometimes it's like holding a hot brick. You don't want to kind of quite, how are they? And they say, well, it's not good news, and things like that. But recently we contacted 3 young people who had gone to McDonald's. We discussed with McDonald's in West London about an opportunity. Could they provide? Could they help? And I think we actually contributed to those young people financially to help them get the job and stuff. And he came back and said, well, what can I say? He said, all 3 are still working. They are brilliant. They are a credit to Asphaleia. Khalid and Merwan are doing really well in our Uxbridge branch, and Tanay is in the branch progressing. He's on the management training course, and he's also completing GCSEs in English and Maths. And that's 3 learners who came into the country with very limited English, very limited knowledge of the system, and the contribution of ESF funds, funders, partnership, and our work alongside many other providers actually made a difference for those young people. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. That was a very fast canter through what is some fantastic provision, and clearly for those who are absolutely the most vulnerable in society. So thank you very much for that. The slides, by the way, will all go on the WorldSkills website. Now, I'm assuming that because we had to start 5 minutes late, we've got 5 minutes for questions now. So we probably have time to take a couple of questions. And I've got a hand up already here. 1, 2, 3. That's it. That's as many as we can do. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Ahmed from the Industrial Training Council in Egypt. I just wanted to ask, how do you filter out those that are really in a situation of NEET from those that are just looking for a better chance, for looking for better employment, but they're not really in a bad situation? Do you just take their words, or do you go through a certain process? How do you do that?
I think Beverly's going to have a crack at that first.
It's our local authorities, of which there are around 150 across England, have a statutory duty towards the young people in their area. And I mentioned the raising of the participation age, and it'll become their duty to make sure that young people are in education, employment or training from 2013. Obviously, that's when compulsory education comes into effect for those up to the age of 17, and then from 2015 for those aged 18. And they have a role in tracking where those young people are and which young people are in education, what they're doing. And it's young people who come through to the sorts of programs that David was describing will come through a sort of referral system through the local authority, who will have identified those young people and have worked in partnership with other agencies locally, such as the social services, health, to make sure that those young people are then in the right type of provision. And so young people that are already in further education or in a job wouldn't sort of fall into that category. They would be prioritising those young people who weren't doing anything and they knew who faced particular issues.
That's a good question, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Kate Jackson from Recycling Lives. We're based in the Northwest, and we're really interested in rolling out a NEET programme. We've actually won an award, and we're presenting in the next slot. We've done loads of work with ex-offenders, but we'd really like to work with NEETs. And I found that there's quite a few barriers to engage in funding because of the ACTA register and minimum contract requirements with the YPLA. So I just wanted to ask advice on how can we, as a relatively small provider in terms of training, we can't get on the ACTA register, but we obviously could develop a programme. How do you advise us to engage with ESF and the YPLA and the SFA going forward?
Sounds like it's over here.
Yes, okay. Oh, yes, because you've got good experience in that. So for the young people, we don't actually use ACTA. You've got to go through the full PQQ, so pre-qualifying questionnaire, and through the ITT as well, invitation to tender. That's only once you've actually been successful to the PQQ. We don't have a minimum contract value either, so you're allowed to have any type of contract value. That's at the moment that has been agreed with our chief executive, but we are working with the Skills Funding Agency a lot, who is the co-financing organisation. in order to apply for this, I think one of the things that is really important for us is to create a good partnership. So working with other organizations, that will, I think, give you more of a chance to actually be successful during the process. I think, yeah, I'll pass it.
Like David's got first-hand experience.
Yeah, just to be brief, the main thing to do, you have to get into a partnership now, because at the moment the funding are in larger contract size and the actual tenders ask for a lead partner. So in some ways that makes it easier, because you don't have to take the responsibility for leading or writing a tender. So it's doing your research. What area is it you're in? So you need to find out who it is who's won the big tenders, because it might be you've just missed a round or something. But if in between now and the next round you get to talk and promote yourself and get yourself positioned, most partnerships will let organisations join that offer credible delivery and stuff. So that's the main thing at the moment. It's quite simple actually. You need to get yourself in the partnerships. So good luck.
Hello, my name is Malcolm Tovey. We are in the hair and beauty sector, Visage. We're a small provider in the southeast of England, just on the borders of Kent and the London boroughs. It's more of an observation, really, than a question, although I would appreciate some feedback. We are quite successful as a small provider. We take 75% of our learners into hair and beauty actually come from the NEAT groups. So we feel really comfortable with that, and we have currently a 78% success rate. Again, that we feel really proud of. However, something just keeps going through my mind. The large employers have training available. People can tap into Marks and Spencer's, Tesco, other supermarkets are available, as they say. But we tap into small hair and beauty salons who, in the current economic climate, it's very difficult getting them to take apprentices. They need an apprentice, they can't afford it. Now, I believe that this will multiply the number of placements that we can make if the employers are supported. If there was some funding support available, there was one a couple of years ago, 12 months ago, where I think it was £2,500 was given. Now, it's self-generating. If you can support the small employers, we can put more apprentices with them. Within 3 months, they're earning money for the business. They're growing their business, and they're starting to make more money. They will then take on a second apprentice, a third apprentice, and so on. I do believe you're missing an opportunity here with thousands and thousands of very small employers. I suppose the question is there any intention to provide support at that level or not? And if not, why not? And can we see some action on that, please?
Right, very quickly, I'm going to try to respond to that. I think the first thing to say is, in looking at provision for needs with European Social Fund, accepting there's a lot of other provision as well, what the fund does is focus on individuals, not on businesses. Now, I think we could argue whether that's right or wrong, but it is about people. But on the positive side, there are pockets of activity going on now, actually, where the link's being made between ESF for the individual and other funding, sometimes the RDF, for the businesses to take those young people on into apprenticeships and other schemes. So I think my answer to you is we're certainly not perfect in getting that as a, shall we say, a national approach. And I'm very cautious about using the word national, because really provision like that needs to be about what's needed in the locality. But there are examples of it happening. And I think perhaps the challenge to us is to share those examples more widely so that others can look at that and think, well, can we make this happen in our local area as well?
I just want to say, I'm from the Skills Funding Agency, I'm Swanston, and there is actually a grant available nationally for employers up to £2,500 to fund apprenticeship wages for an unemployed person who has gone age 18 plus it is at the moment
Thanks for that. Okay, I'll have to wrap up now. I'd like you to just thank again all our speakers. I think it's been really interesting, and we've kind of heard it from the high level down to the very practical, important delivery end. So thank you all for that.